Hey, this is not the analysis for any Spirit Blossoms. What the heck is it? I've been waiting for that.
Champion has the most lore.
Anyways, yeah.
Throughout the history of League of Legends, when it comes to story, some champions were treated well
Yep.
and some weren't. With the gap between the two being so big, it became obvious which champions are the favorites. But it's not really similar to the skin situation. Because when it comes to skins, the most popular champions get the most skins because they can sell the most of them. But when it comes to the lore, overall, an average lore enjoyer doesn't really care about their favorite champion getting a story that much. Usually, people were excited to learn about everyone, which meant that, for the most part, every champion got at least a little bit of lore. For the most part. However, we soon realized...
I don't know who that is. Yeah, I did a Who is Briar lore. She's got like barely anything. She's got like nothing. And I was excited. Her character looks so cool. I love her animation. We didn't get much from her, which is kind of sad.
Is that all the champions who got the most interesting lore also got a lot more of it. And that's usually because with an interesting story there is a lot more creative freedom for the writers around them. Which resulted in some champions having a bit more generic story, with others getting entire books worth of stories. Literally. And so today that's what we're diving into. We will not go through every single champion in League of Legends, but we'll go through all the champions with the longest stories. But first, slight disclaimer. The stats we'll have a look at today are not 100% accurate. And that's because there is a massive difference between all the media. I mean, how do you compare a game to a short story? Also, if there is a story that contains multiple champions, does the total length of the story count towards every champion? And what if one of the champions is the main character of the story? Well, because all of that, let's take everything with a pinch of salt. Anyway, end of disclaimer, let's get on it.
Okay.
Going back into the past for a little bit.
Who is that with the fans?
Today, every champion got the story the exact same way. At the absolute start, we got a bit of the Tribunal story. I'm not gonna be explaining that one in this video.
Okay.
But on top of that,
I don't know what that is. Okay.
every champion got their own lore. Later, this transitioned into every champion getting their own bio, after which there was a whole new formula. While I can't really point out when this started, I am pretty sure Kindred were the first ones to do this back in 2015. But around the time Aurelion Sol was released, the modern lore of League of Legends became a thing. And it became a standard for every new champion to get a bio, and a little bit after that they would also get a short story, with the bio essentially summarizing the champion's lore, and the short story giving us a piece of their story from their own perspective. And so, around 2016, every champion was getting this treatment. However, even though this is when the lore of League of Legends started getting serious, that's not when some of the longest stories came out. Because a year before that, back in 2015, we got the first ever League of Legends lore event called the Burning Tides. This is the one infamous event where a Gangplank died. People will also remember this because...
So that's the very first one. I should probably look at that then and find out what the heck is that.
this is when we got that cool Bilgewater ARAM. But to me, most importantly, this is where we also got a lot of lore. I mean, the Burning Tides was a massive story that included 4 main characters: Misfortune, Gangplank, Graves, and Twisted Fate. And out of all of these, Misfortune is the one who got the most lore. How much lore specifically? We'll talk about that in a sec. Because surprisingly, she has far more than you think, and so we can't start with her. Instead, we need...
Yeah, she's got a lot. I've done a few reactions to it. She got some interesting stories. Also, I'm not sure because so much shit gets retconned. I'm sure so many of the stuff in the first story got changed. So maybe it's not even worth it to go back.
To talk about one champion that quickly became the new king of long stories, or rather the queen. And so the first champion who actually got massive lore was Sivir. Almost exactly a year after the Burning Tides, Riot released the Bloodline story. This story became the foundation of the now canonical Shurima we know today. It was a story that was originally supposed to tie Talia into the story of League of Legends, but because it was explaining Azir and his entire bloodline, Of course, his descendant, Sivir, got included. And so, let's actually dig into some numbers. If we have a look at Sivir's bio, we can count 838 words. Her
Okay.
short story that was included also has 1250 words. Bloodline, which is the massive story that included multiple champions, including stuff like Nasus or Sivir, got 9899 words, but
Oh, it's like a. Oof, that's a bunch of works. I just had to do an essay like 3,000 words. This is like 3 times that. Oof.
that's not
That's
technically
long.
where Sivir's story ends. Because we also got a story called The Twilight of the Gods. Now, while that entire story is focusing on the story of the Darkin, and how the aspect of Twilight came down and taught mortals how to banish them, the aspect used the Chalikar, which is the celestial weapon that Sivir holds. Which means that entire story gave us one big context for Sivir's weapon. And so, if we include this here too, with Twilight of the Gods giving us 7,074 words, in total that is 19,061 words. Now, if we have a look at the average reading speed, we can see that people read
Necrit, what are you, what are you doing? Why are you getting into that?
238 words
What?
per minute. So slapping a time value on all of these words, Sivir's entire lore
Nah, dude. I was expecting like, oh, she's got like this much media. She shows up like this. I was expecting actual like word counts and trying to do math to justify this shit.
equals 80 minutes of pure reading. That
Ah.
sounds like a lot. But you would be surprised to see that a lot of champions are in this category. For example, the one that is somewhat connected to Sivir is Talia. Talia got a bio with 1677 words. She got a short story with 1040 words. Once again, the Bloodline story got 9899 words. Because
Yeah, she's another character. The Earthbender with the cool animation. That's another one that I'm very interested in.
yes, indeed, this story was also about Talia arriving in Shurima. But then there is also the Bird and the Branch story, which is the story where Talia was in Ionia where she met Yasuo, which is also where Yasuo became her master. And that story got 5,235 words. But that's not all, because
Oh.
there is also
She's connected to Yasuo. I'm not crazy as the samurai guy, right? With like the wind powers. Pretty sure. Kind of interesting that the one with like wind powers is like the master for the one with the earthbending powers.
the Hollowspan story, which is the story where
They really love Avatar, huh?
later on, Talia met Kaisa in Shurima. It is the story that was directly tied to that one cinematic. And so that story has 5,790 words. If you combine this with the 5 minutes of Talia's cinematics, we have 23,641 words, which equals 99 minutes of pure Talia lore, which is not too far away from Sivir. And yes, as I mentioned, there is a lot of champions with similar length in story. While most champions have about 30 minutes of lore, if they are lucky, those who got a special treatment got over an hour. This is where we can find someone like Jin, or Zed, or Udyr, or Jarvan, or even Mordekaiser. But to break out of this
Yep.
over an hour long mold, you need special treatment, which is something
I know there's a lot of champions, but for a game that's more than a decade old and it's so famous, I was expecting way more lore. Like way more than just an hour. That's not a lot, by the way. An hour reading, that's nothing.
Riven got.
Hey.
Riven got a bio with 729 words, with a short story that has 1,306 words. But
And a
then,
cool
for
animation.
no big reason at all outside of being connected to Yasuo, Riven just started getting massive stories left and right, which included the entire massive Confessions of a Broken Blade series, which was a 3-part story that has in total 9,371 words. But that's not it, because on top of that, there is also the Sisterhood of War series. This is a gigantic story about Noxian hunters who are looking for Riven in Ionia after the Noxian invasion was over. It is also a massive origin story for Riven in the Ionian invasion, and somehow this entire series has 3 massive parts. Part 1 had 9,800 words,
Okay.
Part 2 had 10,245 words, and Part 3 had 8,315 words. But that's not where Riven's story ends. Because remember, there was
Oh,
also
comic.
the Ruination event. We all remember the Sentinels of Light. But while that entire event was quite massive, about 30 minutes of it all belonged to Riven. And so in total, Riven has 197 minutes, which equals 3.2 hours. So yes, that is 3 hours of your life dedicated to Riven. But things only go crazier from here. Because next, let's have a look at Garen. Garen's bio has 739 words. His short story, which is about killing a hag somewhere in Demacia,
Okay.
has in total 1,958 words. Quite a long one for just a normal short story. But then he also got the entire For Demacia story, which is where he teamed up with Lux and they fought Nocturne. That story has 7,842 words. Then there is the entire Lux comic, which has 5 issues and about 30 minutes of reading in total. But on top of all of that, Garen also got his own novella called Garen. This one had
Okay.
136 pages with
Yeah, this guy has apparently a lot. I don't know much about him, but he looks kind of boring. I don't know. I don't care much. Twisted Fate looks cool as fuck. The Earthbender's cool as fuck. This guy just looks like a dude. Like, I don't find his story very interesting. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
about 260 words per page. This would be about 33,800 words, and so the novella alone is about 142 minutes of reading. So in total, with all the other stories Garen has, we're talking about 214 minutes or 3.5 hours
Okay.
of Garen lore. What's crazy is that Garen got his entire novella, and
Yeah.
yet he is quite close to Riven. But here's the thing.
Okay, but how do you count Arcane then? Because every episode's like an hour. Do you count that? There's 2 seasons. Do you count that as like 16 hours of lore for Jinx? Because it technically is. And Jace and Victor and everyone else? Or did you just go from the wiki and stuff?
Reading is not the only kind of media
Yeah.
that gives us lore. Especially
Yeah,
since
Arcane.
outside of reading, Riot also did one more thing that was purely focused on stories. Riot Forge. I mean, why else
I was expecting him to mention,
would every game have a League of Legends story in the title? And so Riot Forge gave us some games which
what is this? What even is this? I know they made other games. Somebody in the comments let me know they made an Echo game that actually looks really cool. I'm gonna play that. I'm gonna record that someday. Very soon. But this Stardew Valley looking thingy, what is this?
might have tackled some outdated lore, or it might have not had lore at all, or we got a purely story-focused game such as Song of Nunu. With Song of Nunu
Ah.
having about 6 hours of pure story
This looks cute. Kinda looks like my neighbor Totoro.
playthrough. And so, technically, above all the champions that have a lot of reading, Nunu and Willem still have
Yeah.
more lore with about 6 hours of entertainment. But speaking of entertainment, there is this one more thing, kind of small thing, called Arcane.
Yeah.
Yes, by now, Arcane is canon, and so
Yep.
Arcane is giving us a lot of lore for the champions we know. But when it comes to Arcane, we can
Hey.
tackle it in multiple ways. Because Arcane includes a lot of fractured stories, we can assign the value for each
Hey, here he is, the goat.
champion depending on their screen time. And thankfully, someone was actually crazy enough to write
Wow.
down the screen time. And so, for example,
Who did this? Dang. I mean, this is Necrit's job. This is how he gets paid, so that's crazy that someone took the time.
Bessa got a screen time of 56 minutes. Then there is Mel with 1 hour and
Really? Only an hour? She felt like way more important. She got a show coming up, so I guess she's gonna go up way more. Victor only an hour and 51? Really? With season 2? Season 2 was mostly Victor. That's kind of crazy.
22 minutes, Victor with 1 hour and 51 minutes,
Yeah.
Jace with 2 hours
Really? Only half an hour difference with Jace and Victor. Huh.
and 19 minutes, Caitlyn with 2
So, whoa, Vi has more than Jinx? Only by only by like 15 minutes, but still. Jinx is like the main character, kinda crazy. Caitlyn got 2 hours 29. Yeah, that feels about right. I was expecting Jinx to be first.
hours and 29 minutes, Jinx with 3 hours and
Oh, where's Silco? Did we see nope. We got Isha, not Silco, come on. Oh, so we got 58, okay. I was about to say, Silco, he's like one of the best characters. Watch him only have like 20 minutes. And in those 20 minutes, he's one of the best characters ever.
However, I don't think this is a fair way to do this. Because when it comes to the
Yeah.
big stories, we also didn't chop them into pieces and give each champion only their value. No, instead, those stories counted for every champion, because it is giving everyone a context after all. And so, let's do the crazy thing and let's assign every Arcane champion the full length of Arcane.
Okay.
With all the episodes together being about 13.5 hours long. And so now, since none of these champions outside of Mbessa have their bios or short
13? What? Isn't it like it's like 9 episodes season 1, another 9 season 2. They're like an hour long. Should be more.
stories that are fully canon now because of, again, Arcane, they all have 13.5 hours of lore. But
Yeah,
that is
that's a lot.
still not the most lore you can find in League of Legends. Because next, there is also one champion that was not in Arcane at all, and that's Misfortune. You see,
Yeah.
Misfortune has a bio that has 840 words, a short story that has 866 words. Then there is the Burning Tides event, which we mentioned at the very beginning of this video. That event had 9,758 words,
Okay.
after which she also got the Shadow and Fortune story, which is where she defended the Bilgewater from the undead. That story had 3,698 words. But then there is also another story she got called Dead in the Water, which is the story where she faced an old enemy and she also kinda happened to meet Nautilus. That story has 10,065
Oh, I think I did a reaction to that story. Yeah.
words. But then she also got her own comic that would be about 15 minutes of reading. Then,
Purchase
once
miles.
again, the entire
Okay.
Ruination event happened and she was there, which would be about 30 minutes of
I like her in this art style. She looks cute.
story for her alone. After which there is this one tiny thing called the Ruined King game. Now here's the thing. In total, the Ruined King game is about 40 hours long. But because it is so massive, sure, let's not give 40 hours
What's the gameplay? Hold up, what's the gameplay? Kinda looks good.
to Misfortune. There is a lot of context for all the other champions, and that is a
Is it turn-based?
massive game. But since Misfortune is the main protagonist here, I would easily say about 15
Oh, I saw that jiggle. They added jiggle physics. Crazy.
hours of that game are her. And so, if you want to get the complete story of Misfortune,
Okay.
that would be about 10,050 minutes of story to sit through. Or in other
Really?
words, 17 hours of your life dedicated to Misfortune. But even
Doesn't Echo have a game? I didn't know about this game. Echo also has a game. How long is that game? Hold up. Ruin King. What's the name? Ruin King. I'm gonna look that up. Hold up. Ruin King. League of Legends. I just wanna see. 30 bucks? 40 bucks? I could get it. Is it turn-based? Yeah, it's turn-based. Let me know if it's good. I might stream that.
of story to sit through. Or in other words, 17 hours of your life dedicated to misfortune. But even that is not the most lore we have
Time well spent.
in League of Legends. Because next, and I can't believe it, there is Mbessa. You see, Mbessa has
How? I guess Arcane?
a bio that has 606 words, and that's it. She did not even get a short story. I mean, why would she? In Arcane, she did have 56 minutes of screen time. And here I would like to make an exception for what I said before with Arcane.
Yeah.
Sure, we can treat all the champions equally with their 3.5 hours of Arcane lore, but let's be honest, Mbessa wasn't even there for half of the entire series. On top of that, when Mbessa was there, she was a really cool villain, but when it comes to her lore and her background and where she came from and what she was doing, we did not learn anything.
In my personal opinion, they were trying to tackle way too much. Instead of having Victor and her be the bad guys, they needed to keep her for the Welcome to Noxus show. But she's more connected to her daughter, and instead of focusing on her, we needed to get into Victor and Jace for the final season. That's my opinion. They tried to do way too much in the final season.
You knew she was from Noxus, you knew that she did something with Mel,
Yeah.
and that was it. She was just a cool, big, bad guy. But still, let's be generous and let's give Mbessa half of the entire Arcane time. You'll see later it doesn't really matter, but let's be fair. And so, 7 hours of Arcane belongs to her. Well, it so happens to be that Mbessa also got her own book.
Really?
Now, this is a book that I still have to cover on this channel. It is quite big and I have no idea if I can even format it. But that book has 425 words with about 270 words per page, meaning
So this is what I mean. Instead of making it a book and wasting her character and killing her in season 2, just make it another season. Make it like an OVA. Make it a movie. Most people are not gonna go read 400 pages. I love reading, so I might. Right now I'm reading I Like It Dark by Stephen King. You Like It Dark? I'm loving the book.
that is about 114,210 words, which would be 480 minutes, which would be 8 hours. Now here's the thing, those 8 hours is just you reading, under perfect conditions, I guess. Because interestingly enough, there is also an official audiobook. And that official audiobook has 15.5 hours. And so
Fuck. 15 hours? That's a heavy request.
again, let's be fair, let's be accurate, and let's give her the full value. This would mean that with the audiobook, her bio
I have the audiobook for Sherlock Holmes with all the works in Audible. That's like 26 hours. How the hell is this one story 400 pages and it's 15 hours? That's way too much. Unless they actually put like sound effects and do like action scenes and fights, I don't see how you get to 15 hours. That's crazy.
and Arcane, Mbessa's full story comes to around 23.5 hours. For a character that came out of nowhere,
Yeah.
that's incredible. But that is still not the most lore we have in League of Legends. No, that crown goes to the one true king. The one that is
Mordecai?
linked to the entire story of Bilgewater. The one that's been at the center of multiple events. The one that is still being linked with new champions years after his release. Which is
Okay.
also the same champion that has a massive potential for the MMO. I mean, I'm gonna be very sad if he doesn't make it in. And that, of course, is Viego, the Ruined.
Ah.
You see, Viego's story is so complex and so massive that Riot had to release their own infographic to show you just how tangled it
Who is Gwen? Who is this? I love this art style.
is. And even this shows you like 10% of the truth. And so let's break down the numbers.
Oh, Gwen. I think that's the one that's the Kill la Kill reference, if I'm not mistaken.
characters. His bio has 694 words. His short story, which finally introduced his queen, had 1,174 words. But then he also got the second short story, which introduced Callista as his general. This one had 3,191 words. However, Viego is only one half of his own story. I mean, there is a reason why he's always looking for his queen. And so, although Isolde herself isn't a champion in League of Legends, she is heavily tied to Gwen.
Yeah, that's the Kill la Kill reference. I love that.
Where Gwen's existence is even responsible for the banishment of Viego at the very end of his story. So if you want to have the full context of Viego's story, you also have to include Gwen. And so Gwen's bio also has 685 words. She also has a short story which has 1,361 words, which again, it's not like it really matters, but let's be accurate. After which Viego also got a story where Senna picked up a piece of Isolde's soul. That's what triggered Viego's hunt, and that story had 4,956 words. Now, if we go back to the character tree, you can see that there is a lot of other characters, but most of those were already described in his book. And so yes, of course, in case you didn't know, Viego also has his entire book, with the Ruination book also having an audio version, and that one is 12 hours and 50 minutes. So I don't think we also have to go through the bios of all the other characters. But there is also another story that was released specifically for Viego, which is The Will of the Dead. A story that has 10,830 words. It is a story that was released by Riot Forge, and it was a story that was supposed to give Yorick some justice because he wasn't included in the hunting of Viego. Speaking of which, let's not forget that there is the entire Ruination event, with the Sentinels of Light not only having Viego as their main villain, but it is also an event that had a separate story in League PC and Wild Rift. And since Viego was the centerpiece of both of these, that is about an hour and a half of lore. But of course, we're still not done yet.
I did not expect number one to be this guy, to be honest. I was expecting Mordekaiser or someone.
Because Viego also had his own game, The Ruined King. Again, in total, this is a
Where's Moriana and her sister? She keeps mentioning that all the time. They weren't even in the list.
40-hour-long game, with about 20 hours of the main story. With the main story being nothing but Viego lore. Now sure, again, there is a lot of side quests and a lot of more context that can be found there. And so realistically, let's give Viego about 25 hours of the entire game. Now of course, he was also the main character of 3 separate cinematics that would be about 15 minutes in total, but he also has a lot more lore in Legends of Runeterra, and that one is really hard to put some value on. I mean, there we learned a lot about the Gamavoran dragons and their armor and their soldiers. And let's not talk about the entire lore of Smolder, so let's give Viego about 20 minutes there. But in total, that means that Viego currently sits on the throne with the most lore out of any League of Legends champion, with the summed up total of 2,395 minutes of lore, which equals 39.9 hours. It's almost like he could have had his own series or something. But that would only inflate his numbers more. I mean, it's still crazy to see that Ambessa is on the 2nd place, though Viego still almost doubled her numbers. And we were still generous with not giving him the entire value.
Yeah, once we get Noxus, that list is gonna change drastically. Damn it. I hope the next show after Noxus is Ionia. I don't want to focus on this guy. Like, yeah, interesting, but I want to see Ionia way more. Way more.
View of the game. But yes, that's the numbers we got at the very end. Now I'll be honest, I did not go through every single possible champion. I kinda went by memory of when I was working on the stories of those champions, and I just remembered how some champions stuck way up above the rest. I mean, some are still waiting for their judgment day. And so I would love to see if someone could go through every single champion and actually note down their values. Because you still have some other champions, such as Ari, who was also in the Ruined King game, and she also got a lot of other stories. But that would be way too much of a time sink for me. And so, at the end of the day, let's just be happy we got a classic necrit video. I know, it's 2025, who would have thought that?
I'm still new, so I guess I got my first classic. It's time for classic. Okay, did someone say lore? Yep, I'm here for it. I'm gonna check this game out. Let's see. It has positive reviews, so I don't know, maybe. I think it'd be interesting to jump into a game. I don't know, let me know if I can jump into the game or if I need to know more background stuff.